Today we are going to be talking about the differences between Baldur's Gate 3 and tabletop D&D. We will talk about how different the rules are, how different the spells interact in Baldur's Gate 3, and also some other action economy stuff that you should know before starting playing. This guide will be useful for both newcomers and players returning from 5th edition D&D. I hope I'll explain things well, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Let us begin with the level cap, which, while pretty high for a D&D campaign, is not close to the maximum level cap of 20. Level 12 will still make you experience high level abilities and spells up to level 6, so there is still plenty to be excited about. One of the first big changes that were announced recently is that the races in Baldur's Gate 3 will now get aesthetic +2/+1 bonus to ability scores of your choice, unlike the system we currently have when different races have different bonuses to different ability scores. This is a system taken from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, a supplemental book for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It is unconfirmed whether you'll be able to stick to the old-fashioned predetermined stats we now have in early access. I also wonder what will happen to the Hill Dwarves, which are the only race to currently have a +2/+2 ability score in Strength and Constitution. Baldur's Gate 3 uses point buy, meaning you will always have the same pool of attributes to allocate to your character. Also, the multiclassing requirement of ability scores were removed, meaning you won't need to have a score of 13 intelligence, for example, to multiclass to a wizard, or a 13 strength for a fighter. Respecialization of your characters. You will be able to fully respec your character. The only thing we don't know yet is if we will be able to respec our starting class as well. You always roll maximum hit points per level, so no need to reload your save after level up. You can short rest twice, which restores your health, your bardic inspirations, warlock spells, and some other factors depending on your class and subclass. When you want to take a long rest, you use your camp supplies or food that you find along your journey. There is no time limit, and the game doesn't punish you for resting whenever you want. In fact, some conversation checks with your party only appear after you visit your camp for a long rest, so be mindful to not go too long without a rest or you might miss out on some conversations. Dark Vision and Superior Dark Vision has a reduced range comparing to tabletop, but they are still very noticeable. There is no penalty for playing a drow or duergar for walking in sunlight or for being a vampire during the day for that matter. When you are above your target by 10 feet or more, you will get a +2 attack roll modifier. Similarly, if you are below your target, you will get a -2 penalty. There are no tool or language proficiencies in Baldur's Gate 3. You also don't need to be a rogue in order to pick locks and disarm traps. All you need is the sleight of hand proficiency and thieves tools or disarm trap kit in your inventory. There is no hearing checks. Your hiding checks are fully dependent on if the creature can see you. Inspiration also works differently. There is a limit of 4 inspiration dice you can have at a time, which you can use when you fail a proficiency check, for example in conversations. You gain inspiration based on your background and also your companion's background. Caster classes can freely change their prepared spell list at any time while not in combat, meaning unlike in Baldur's Gate 2 and other similar games, you won't waste your spell slots when replacing it with another. As long as you have the tier of the spell available, you will be able to cast it without the need of a long rest. There is no verbal, somatic, or material components required to cast a spell, meaning if you are silenced by a spell or ability, you won't be able to use any of your spells at all. Any class can cast any spell, no matter if it's of their school. For example, a cleric can cast wizard spells from scrolls and vice versa. This might be changing on release, but for now nothing implies it. Some spells have been also buffed quite a bit. For example, the haste spell now gives you a full action, which means you don't only get an extra attack per round, but you get a full action of your whole abilities that you could have used on your turn, which is just very powerful because you can double the amounts of attacks you normally do. Or even cast a couple spells per round, which is usually quite impossible in tabletop D&D. Now on to actions, also called action economy. You can use the help action to bring your ally back on their feet. You don't need to use a healing potion or a healing spell after combat to pick them up. You can also do this during combat. Jumping is now a bonus action, but it consumes 10 feet of movement. The distance is dependent on your strength score. It increases by 1.5 feet for every point of strength you have above 10. Dodge is not an action you can take in Baldur's Gate 3 except for monks, who will have patient defense. Also, you cannot ready and hold an action and wait for your turn to execute it. There is no grappling action as well. Unlike in tabletop, shove is not a full round attack action, meaning it's a bonus action that all characters can make after attacking an enemy. It can be very powerful and trivialize some fights by sending their enemies to their demise early. Consuming a potion is also a bonus action, so you can attack and then heal. Just make sure not to use your offhand attack because it counts as a bonus action as well. Hide is currently a bonus action, but that will most likely change on full release of the game as indicated on some of the new footages of the game. It indirectly buffs rogues who can use cunning action hide to use stealth during combat. Equipment. Weapons have unique abilities now. Similar to Divinity Original Sin, for example, a two-handed sword has Lacerate that you can use once per combat to inflict additional bleed damage. There is no need to identify items, whatever you pick up will already be identified. Helms, boots and gloves are also split between armor classes. And, for example, you cannot cast spells if you don't have the required proficiency. For example, Gale won't be able to cast his spells if we equip medium boots on him. That's why, for example, taking the Ranger Knight's favorite enemy could be beneficial even if you don't plan on wearing heavy armor on a Ranger, because now you will be able to cast your spells while equipping those heavy boots, helms or gloves. There is no limitation or penalty for equipping or de-equipping your armor during combat, but it will cost you your action. There is also no starting equipment. Everyone has their own predetermined gear, like the armor you can see on character creation. Crossbows do not need reloading. They function similarly to bows and can fire every turn, making hand crossbow and heavy crossbow builds possibly very strong. Status effects. Unlike in tabletop, if you become prone during combat, you lose control of your character for the turn. Think of it as a one-round stun. Blind status. In addition to the effects from tabletop, your ranged attacks are also limited to 15 feet of range, but you can make opportunity attacks while blinded. Wet is a new condition introduced in Baldur's Gate 3. You cannot burn while wet and gain resistance to fire damage, but you will take double damage from lightning and cold. Frightened condition also works a bit differently, as you will be unable to move at all while feared, unless the status effect is fearful, which will cause them to flee away from the target as well. And those are pretty much all the rule changes that I know are coming from D&D. Let me know what you thought about it. I would love to see you in the comments, and also thank you so much for watching my videos. We are nearing 2,000 subscribers only after a couple weeks of uploads, so I just can't thank you enough for making this my dream come true, to be able to share my experiences with Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D to you guys and girls. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my live streams where I will be playing Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes out. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again very soon.